Firstly, get JB Weld, okay? Not the Marine Weld or the Quick Weld. The original is by far the best. Like, I was having so many troubles getting the rig to actually, for the hydrogen to not escape the rig. I was having so many issues until I used this stuff. This stuff is some of the strongest glue out. It is like the strongest glue you can get at a hardware store. It's stronger than super glue. The only downside being that it's not waterproof until it dries, but once it dries, it's waterproof. It's chemically resistant, etc. And it takes 24 hours to dry. That's the other downside. But other than that, I was having so many problems trying to get the hydrogen to not escape and to actually go through the rig. I used other epoxies that was leaking down here through here, but yeah, now that I'm using this epoxy, there's no leaks and the hydrogen is actually bubbling. Like, watch this, okay? This is incredible. Let's just wait for it. Wait for it. It takes a little bit because the rig hasn't fully sped up yet, but yeah, it does. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to build the electrical bridge. As usual, I'm using women's products to build it. When you tear them apart, there is a, like, very soft fabric pad at the center in between the plastic layers. And essentially you're going to tear that pad out since it's what has all the sodium polyacrylate powder ingrained into it. And yeah, you got to tear apart like 4 or 5 of them to get enough to build this. Anyway, we take 2 of these, use them as the middle. Take this, take it apart for the sodium polyacrylate center pad. Roll it up. You want to apply pressure and roll it up as tight as possible because yeah, like previous electrical bridges, when I try to do it this way, it's always a bit tricky because when it goes up and over, the salts have a lot harder time traveling. But this way, the salts will travel a lot easier. So you really want to make sure that this water bridge is like tight as hell. You want to have to force it in there a little bit. Like, you want to struggle to be able to fit it in there a little bit to make sure that it's actually tight. That is the last of my epoxy. I have it in this position for most of the drying so that it really seeps into the crevices that I used like a wire brush that you use for cleaning dishes to scrape up the plastics so that it'll really stick. Future Gabe here. So using a dish brush to scrape up the plastic and make sure that the epoxy really bonds is well worth it, because as you can see, the side that I scraped it up and did the preparation of the plastic on isn't leaking, but the other side, I'm struggling to get it fully sealed a lot. So I bought some more epoxy. I call JB Weld Skunk Weld because it's black and white, and it smells like a skunk, and you mix it up really good. The better you mix it up, the better the bond will be. I mixed this side really good with the Gorilla epoxy, and it stuck a lot better. And I'm just spreading it out here. I'm getting as much as possible. I just mixed up a dab of it. And then just slowly fit this side on, I guess. This stuff is not waterproof until it dries fully, so just keep that in mind. Now that this is fit on here, nice and tight, I squeezed it on there. I'm going to add some extra around the crevice just to make sure that it just stays. I'm going to mix up more. Just mix it in a 50-50 ratio and mix it really good so that it really sticks. You can see we cut a hole through the top with a box cutter, and we also created a tubing system as well. So as you can see, these tubes, they were sealed using a method. So the method that I used to create these is essentially I dip these tubes in hot water to make the vinyl or whatever plastic they're made out of very loose and rubbery, and then I stuck them together while they were soft from the heat of hot water. And yeah, now they're like squeezing. Now what we're gonna do is essentially we're gonna super glue this. We're gonna force this onto here. We're gonna put a ring of super glue and we're gonna force this onto here as quickly as possible before it dries. And I can't show it because I need 2 hands for this operation. As you can see, the hydrogen side is almost done. We sealed this also with super glue, and we sealed this with super glue. And we drilled a hole for the electrode to go through. We're going to use a high power copper wire. This sheet of brass metal, and I have stapled a hole in it using a stapler. I removed the staple using this little thing on my pocket knife. And once the super glue dries, we took this wire that was pretty long and we forced it through this hole, we super glued it, and then we wrapped the brass sheet in the wire. Baking soda can actually encourage super glue to dry a lot faster and harder. And now that this is dry, I added the new anode. I sealed around here, the top and this, with super glue. So yeah. Anyway, we have magnesium sulfate. You can use Epsom salt, but this is pharmaceutical grade. And essentially what we're doing is we are funneling it into the hydrogen side, the side that's going to collect hydrogen gas. Squeeze the funnel, tap it, and yeah. We fill it up to the fill line that we created using the bottom of this electrode right here. So yeah, that should be as full as we're going to want to get it. You can see we added a generous helping of JB Weld here, and now we just got to screw it down. So yeah, this is a bit of a tricky operation, but it should fit just fine. And the reason why we have to epoxy this down is because hydrogen gas is just so slippery. If we didn't weld this down, it would just escape, and I learned this the hard way previously. I'm at it, I might as well weld all of these gaps as well. So right now it is almost 3 p.m. JB Weld, the downside is that it takes longer than a lot of other glues to dry. It takes 4 to 6 hours to set and 24 hours to fully cure to full strength. So yeah, I will probably have to wait until at least 6 hours, until 9 p.m. to even think about filling this thing with water. Drying it in this position to make sure that this really seeps into the crevices and whatnot. This is more just an afterthought. It has more safety nets, like they've either been fixed using heat or they've been fixed using super glue, or both. A super saturated solution of Epsom salt. This is very high grade, but it was made with my coffee maker, so it's an off brown from coffee contamination, but it doesn't matter that much. One, we're essentially just going to fill this baby up with fuel all the way. Fuel being the supersaturated magnesium sulfate solution of Epsom salt. Essentially, we filled up this to right below the bridge with the supersaturated magnesium sulfate, and then we filled this all the way with tap water. And now we're just waiting for the tap water to dissipate above the bridge. And once it dissipates above the bridge, we can fill it the rest of the way with the magnesium sulfate. Because at that point, the electrolysis bridge will be fully saturated with water. While we are running the electrolysis rig, with the positive hooked up to this side and the negative always produces hydrogen hooked up to this side with the hydrogen stuff set up to collect the gas. And the reason we're running it is because the more we run it, the faster we're going to get the copper sulfate, and the faster we're going to get up to like 0.5 amp, which is around what you need to actually be producing a decent amount of hydrogen. So the water level is up to around the top of this, so now we're going to add the rest of the sulfate solution. We might have to produce more. This is a bit much. We definitely don't need to produce more. See, I took some Teflon tape and I added it onto here so that it fits in this hole of this raft that I plan to fill with hydrogen once this starts bubbling a decent amount. But right now, it's bubbling very slowly. You can see gas production right now isn't super fast. Like, look. It is bubbling, but it's not producing a ton of hydrogen. So I have set up a purging apparatus to slowly bubble until the hydrogen production is faster, and by that point, since it's underwater, the hydrogen will have diluted the regular air in the tubes, which is exactly what it's designed for. You're purging out the regular air and replacing it with hydrogen. I have my ultimate electrolysis rig fully set up. In the next video, I will use it to fill this raft with hydrogen gas. In the next video, this should have produced a lot of copper sulfate, and the voltage should go up a lot. So, hope you enjoyed. See you then.